Welcome to Celtic State of Mind. I'm John Dykes, and today I am joined by director Luke Massey. Luke, you and I have worked together previously on a documentary that we'll be speaking about today, but it always intrigues me how people like yourself get into the industry of making films, and I know that your debut movie was Armistice back in 2013. Could you tell us a wee bit of your background, Luke, and how you moved into the industry?
Yeah, well, it was kind of family business. My dad was an actor. He was from Glasgow, and he worked at the Royal Shakespeare Company. And so I was brought up in Stratford-upon-Avon, and it just seemed like becoming an actor or working in theatre or film just seemed like a natural thing. And I originally wanted to be an actor, but then I'm quite shy in front of camera, and I can't act. So that was an issue. and so going behind the camera seemed to be more of a route for me. And so I worked as a camera trainee with the BBC when I was 17. And I did a couple of films, did a horror film with some friends. They went on to become pretty decent actors in America. The two leads, Joe Morgan did a TV show called The Vampire Diaries, and then got his own TV show called The Originals. Matt Ryan did his own TV show called Constantine, which is like a DC universe thing, which he still plays in a TV series called Legends of Tomorrow. And because of my love of football, I decided to go down the documentary route. And the first documentary I did, like you said, was Smiler, which was, I think you texted me the other day, which is 5 years old, I think,
5 years.
At the weekend.
Yeah,
which is incredible, really. It doesn't seem that long ago.
You get these things on social media, as you know, popping up, and it took me by surprise as well. It took me back. I remember sitting one night, it was on Twitter actually, and it was yourself, followed me on Twitter. I followed you back. We started chatting about the Quality Street Gang, and you and I embarked on a project that maybe one day we'll finish. But that was our first foray into the world of documentaries together, was trying to make an adaptation of the Quality Street Gang. I mean, looking back on that, it's tinged with regret for me because I think it would make a great film. Yeah, because of everything that's going. I mean, I was talking to you before that I'm going through all my hard drives and just cleaning my studio out, and then I found 1.5 terabytes of interviews that we did. A lot of them were in Hampden Park, and it was with the likes of Bobby Lennox, Stevie Chalmers, Davey Hay, David Cannon, John Fallon. And I think enough time has passed now where I think I will start cutting them together. I'll probably start cutting them together this week, and I think we will put out like 10 3-minute mini episodes of the Quality Street Gang, talking about different subjects, and I think enough time has passed that we might as well get the footage out there, and I think a lot of people would love to see, these legends talking about other legends of the game, like Kenny Dalglish. So yeah, I'll get on that this week. That would be magnificent. When you mentioned some of the names there, Stevie Chalmers, I also remember we spoke to Tony McBride, and these guys have now passed on, and it would be fantastic for everybody just to see these interviews that we did back in the day, Luke, and I for one would love to see these popping up over the next few weeks, particularly when we're in isolation. Hence the reason we're doing this over the telephone. Otherwise, I'd have jumped in the car and come down and we could have done it in person. So anyone who's listening, we are looking to do daily podcasts on a Celtic State of Mind. We have a studio set up which we can't use in Glasgow. This is being done back at the kitchen table as episode 1 was done, Luke. And so anybody who is listening to this and they think it sounds a wee bit different, that's because obviously the environment is slightly changed as of yesterday's announcement, Luke. How concerning are these times, and what are you doing to allay the fears of yourself and those around you? Yeah, I mean, I think it's concerning for everyone. I think a lot of people have elderly relatives, and that's probably on their mind. I live away. I live in Yorkshire, and my family's based in the Midlands, so just trying to check in as much as I can. But for me, obviously, like all of my work, is documentary work, and everything I do is interactive, like yourself. So you just have to adapt. And because I'm going to have a quite 3 months now, I've decided to put my gear to use. And in Yorkshire, we're offering a live streaming service to charities, to teachers. So there still feels that there's a bit of a community where a teacher can still reach their pupils. I've got friends who are actors who are going to read some kids' books at a certain time. And we're going to stream this on YouTube Live. We've got some people who are like yoga teachers or physical trainers who are going to do lessons. I just feel like everyone needs to kind of muck in and do what they can. And I think probably it's important that everyone does try and stay at home or try to keep a distance from people, as annoying as it is. But I think
for 3 months, I think it could make a huge difference.
Absolutely. And I think in order to see the real kind of scope of this, I think you just got to look across at some of the countries who were hit before we were, and the impact that that's had, and the death toll that it's had. And this is real. People, still going about their business yesterday. It's quite frustrating, because you know that is just going to feed into the spread of this virus. The fact that you are offering a service to the community such as that, I take my hat off to you. That's fantastic. You've got the know-how, and you're helping others within the community to get their word out, and it's going to assist kids, it's going to assist people with their mental well-being, with their fitness regime as well, Luke. But also, it's 5 years since Smiler, and we've been chatting about doing some streams of Smiler in the coming weeks. Could you talk to us about that as well?
Yeah, what we're going to do is, hopefully starting from this Friday, and we'll put information out on your Twitter feed and your social media networks, but we're going to put Smiler on at 6 o'clock, which is our debut film, every Friday. It just gives a chance. I think it's a good hour and a half film. So it gives a chance for people to watch it for free. They can just log on to the YouTube channel and watch the film for free. And then the DVD extras we'll put out. And then, like I said, the Quality Street Gang stuff we'll put out. Just a bit of content. And I think just on a more lighter-hearted note, for football fans, like I love football. I know you do, and I watch any kind of football. It is an opportunity to. I am watching reruns of like World Cup '90 and older football games, and watching all the documentaries. And I think it's a good time to kind of, as much as watching live football is exciting, Celtic's got a really, really rich history, and it's a good time to look back on it. You've done enough books where people can read, and there's enough documentaries where people can really get to know their club again. Maybe some younger fans might not, don't know about the Lisbon Lions, but they might not know about the Quality Street Gang or characters like Mochan. And I think those are really important figures, in Celtic's history.
Oh, absolutely. And like you say there with the books, the 3 that have already been published will be getting sent out by PDF to anybody who sends me their email. Just gradually send them out for anyone who's maybe not read them. There's only a few copies of some of them left, so that, again, just looking back on the history, people will have a wee bit more time to do that. Watch films, read books. Talking of filmmaking, I know it's your passion, Luke. Talk to me about some of the documentaries that perhaps inspired you, or maybe that you'll be digging out in the next few weeks and watching again.
In terms of, I love Fallon Sugarman. That's probably my favourite film about the musician David Rodgers. And he was a huge musician in South Africa. He wasn't really aware of it. In South Africa, it became kind of a legendary figure, this musician who had killed himself to kind of protest against the apartheid in South Africa.
Yeah.
And he hadn't. He was just a builder who didn't make it as a musician in America. And this young filmmaker from South Africa tried to track him down, and then found out that he was still alive, and flew over to America to meet him, and then eventually flew to South Africa with Rodriguez, and they played a gig in front of, I think it was 50,000 people. And it's a really interesting documentary, and it's a real feel-good documentary about how, I suppose, the thin line between success and failure. And I think that's on Netflix still. That's a really good one. And one more recently, the Maradona documentary is on Channel 4 streaming. It came out over the weekend on Channel 4, so it'll still be on there if anybody wants to watch it. But that's one of the best modern documentaries I've seen. Absolutely fascinating character. And it's the most complete documentary I've seen on Maradona. So those 2, I'd suggest if people on Netflix or on the Channel 4 they could watch.
Brilliant. I mean, it was yourself that introduced me to searching for Sugarman. And strangely enough, you also introduced me to a Maradona documentary by Costa Curta, which is a different one that was brought out a few years back. I've not seen the latest one, Luke, but you're saying to me now this is the ultimate go-to Maradona film, yeah?
Yeah, it's done by the guy who directed it. He directed Senna and Amy. I think he won an Oscar for both of them. He's a massive Liverpool supporter, actually. But the Maradona interview, it's quite unique because all of the interviews is only audio. The whole documentary is just B-roll. It's just archive footage.
Right. Because
when Maradona went from Barcelona to Napoli, a film crew followed him for about 2-3 years. But there was a falling out, and that footage was basically lost. And this guy found it, and he got the rights to it. So the whole documentary is just archive footage. So it's like an hour and 40 minutes of archive footage with voiceover. And it does kind of show, essentially what the documentary shows is the separation between these 2 characters, which is Diego and Maradona, And Diego's a sweet young man who doesn't have an ego, and then Maradona's kind of this myth and bigger, larger-than-life character who takes over Diego. And one of the lines in it is that Diego basically disappears, and then all you left is Maradona. It's a good watch, but it is kind of quite heartbreaking because, you know, he's probably not the most likeable character in football, probably the most interesting, but probably one of the most hated. And not because of the hand of God or anything, just because of, you know, probably the most naturally gifted football player of all time, and they kind of squandered it. You know, the opposite to Massey, really, where Massey just seems to keep going and become fitter and quieter. And Maradona was this great player who just kind of he just became a bit of a figure. I mean, now he's just a bit of a figure of fun.
You know, and I think it's a discussion you and I have had previously, when you're looking at subjects for, let's say, a book in my case, or a documentary for yourself, Luke, and there's a certain something that attracts you to the character. And I know that the Neely Mochan story was very much about an unsung hero that some of the younger generation, most of the younger generation, didn't appreciate, and it was time to bring that story to light. There are also players like Maradona and others who, as football fans, we seem attracted to them because they're a bit vulnerable or broken. Why do you think that is, that these cult players, if you like, and we can't call Diego Maradona a cult, he was the greatest player in the world, but these players who are a bit unhinged seem to attract people that want to write books and make movies?
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I think flawed characters. I remember someone talking before the last World Cup, someone was talking about Massey in Argentina, South American journalist, saying that Massey is nowhere near as loved in Argentina as he is at Barca. And it's not because he hasn't won anything major of Argentina. It's because he's not flawed enough. You know, that's why Maradona's so loved. He's relatable. Whereas Messi's seen as this holier-than-thou kind of character, so he's not loved. And I think the same almost goes for Johan Cruyff. I mean, he's my favourite character in football. He's kind of probably my biggest hero. But I think because he didn't have that flaw, he isn't seen as loved as Maradona or Gascoigne in England. Mm-hmm. You know, I think you need that dark side, and then people kind of can relate to it. And I think in terms of a story, it's more, you need a tragedy in your story. And I think, interesting enough, the two documentaries I've done on Celtic was with Neely Mochan and then with Sean Fallon. Not that they're both unsung heroes, really, of football, but they're also renowned as two of the nicest people, you know, at Celtic at that time. You know, everyone, like when we spoke to Danny McGrain about Sean, you know, he used the word that he loved them, which you don't really, tough footballers don't really say that kind of thing. But I think Neely Mochan and Sean Fallon were just, you know, two great people who kind of probably had the right attributes to go against what Jock Stein had.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I do think flawed characters do make good documentaries, but I also think you can make documentaries about nice people, you know, like Sean and Neely.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a nice link, actually, that you mentioned Johan Cruyff, because there's a fantastic story that Sean Fallon told about Johan Cruyff. Could you maybe share that with some of the listeners who weren't aware of Sean Fallon's endeavours when he was at Boghead in Dumbarton? Yeah, well, funny enough, it's one of those stories that you wouldn't believe is actually true, but because it got confirmed by Neil, actually Martin Gregg, who works at Backpage Press, who published the Sean Fallon book, he actually met Cruyff to confirm it at a golf game. But yeah, so Johan Cruyff was kind of coming to the end of his career, and he was thinking about a next step. And it's before he went to America for the second time, and he basically short for when he was at the one that he could get Cruyff to sign, and they actually had a meeting with him. And Cruyff was considering it as a serious possibility. The reason he didn't want to do it is because he said that he found the weather difficult in terms of pitches. So yeah, but it did come close for Cruyff to go there, which is absolutely bizarre. It also shows kind of what Sean had as not just a great talent scout, but just as a mind, you know. And I think him and Jock had that thing, you know, because they got Pat Stanton late in his career, didn't they? I mean, and he didn't think he'd ever move to a club like Celtic at that time. But it shows they had an eye for an older player, and I think that's a sign of a good manager. And I think, you know, Liverpool, when they got Gary McAllister, you know, people were amazed that Gary McAllister was going to Liverpool at his age. And, you know, he won the European trophy. So I think it's a sign of a good manager to look for older players as well as the younger ones. Absolutely, and it's a great story. And Stephen Sullivan then tells a story about Cruyff in the bus outside Celtic Park when Ajax and Celtic met in Europe. Are you aware of that story, Luke?
Yeah, he told that actually. We interviewed, when we're doing the John Barnes doc, I worked on that with Stephen Sullivan, and we interviewed Jan Molby at his house. And Jan confirmed that story as well, that they were putting the kits away at Celtic Park, and the younger players were helping with the kit man. And they went back to the bus, and the kit's gone. And so the kit man at Ajax demanded all of the players to go and knock on the doors, find out where the kits are, or the Ajax kit. And so everyone went off and had to knock on doors, apart from Johan Cruyff, who was having a fag on the bus and refused to leave. But Jan said that he was doing it, knocking on doors and being told to F off by a load of people. So they never got the kits back. So Jan always said there must have been a school team that had the best kits for a couple of seasons.
I think that's a fantastic story. I think it's Le Coq Sportif, the blue Ajax away strip that they wore when they played at Celtic Park. And I'm just picturing now Jan Molby, Jesper Olsen, Marco van Basten knocking on doors around about Parkhead, looking for these stolen kits and getting told to F off by various Glaswegians around about that time. I think that's a fantastic story, and I'm delighted that you managed to get that nugget from Jan Molby. Again, that's a brilliant link into your third documentary about John Barnes. Again, Celtic links, maybe not as romantic as the Sean Fallon and Neil Mochan story in terms of the Celtic links, but what a player. And you released Poetry in Motion back in 2018. Tell us about that one. That was a bit of a coup getting John Barnes involved.
Yeah, I was actually supposed to be doing another documentary, and it got, like it happens a lot, at the last minute it got cancelled, but we still had the slot with BT, so they kind of asked me to find something else. And so I'm a Liverpool supporter, and probably my favourite player of all time is John. And so I contacted his manager and explained, because there'd been films made before about John, and I didn't think there'd been a lot done at his time at Watford. And I know, because he had such a great career at Liverpool, arguably one of the greatest players, definitely in the top five. But I did think there wasn't a lot made of his time at Watford and his time of coming over to England. And so we kind of approached him, and very quickly we realised that we could probably do something. So it's the shortest film I've made. It's only an hour long, and it premiered after the FA Cup between Manchester United and Chelsea. And yeah, it was nice. We did speak to a lot of Liverpool legends, people like Robbie Fowler. And again, it's kind of a feel-good film. There is a lot about the racist abuse he suffered. But yeah, John felt that was just such a bigger issue that you can't really cover it in a 60-minute documentary. So we did ask him a lot about it, and he put his views across, which are a bit different to everyone else's, especially to other black players. And we also covered Hillsborough, which is obviously a hugely difficult time in modern football history, and it changed a lot of things. But yeah, it's a film I'm proud of, and as a Liverpool supporter, it was great to spend a couple of days at Anfield with it being closed off, and great to spend some time with John and some other Liverpool players. Like Jan Molby is one of my favourite players, So yeah, really, really good experience all around. And it was nice to work with Stephen Sullivan again. And Stephen worked for the Celtic View while John was at Celtic as manager.
Yeah.
So that was sharing an old story, which was quite nice.
No, absolutely. And one of the nicest guys in the world of Celtic and media that I've ever met, Stephen Sullivan. I mean, 3 fantastic documentaries. And you've said there, Luke, that you're a Liverpool fan, but I know through experience you also have a Celtic state of mind. And when we were working on the Quality Street Gang and Celtic Smeller, we went to quite a few games, quite a few European games, if I remember correctly, during the Ronnie Dyla era. And at that time, you were talking about Liverpool a lot, and they were managed at that point by a certain Brendan Rodgers. And I remember you being very vocal about Liverpool having to go out and get Jurgen Klopp back then. So let's bring it right up to date and fill us in on the blanks. Brendan Rodgers.
Yeah, I mean, I've always liked, since Brendan Rodgers came to Liverpool, I always really liked him. I always thought that he probably, which I think he's stopped now since he's gone to Leicester, I always thought he did too much press. There was a lot of quotes, and I think that never helps a manager when you're young and starting out, because I think people always say, what do you want, But I always really liked the way he worked with younger players, and I liked the way he played football. I have always been a massive fan of Jurgen Klopp since he was at Dortmund, really. So I always wanted Klopp at Liverpool. I always thought it would be an amazing fit. But yeah, Rodgers, I really thought he was a great manager. I thought he did, obviously, he couldn't really done much more apart from in Europe. His record wasn't great for Celtic. I thought, obviously, the way he left, just thought it was really bad timing. But he's continuing to do incredibly well at Leicester. And I think he will go on to become, a title-winning manager somewhere. I think there's enough teams. He's got more experience and he's a better manager than what Man United has, what Arsenal has, what Chelsea have, which is absolutely bizarre to say that now. But I think he will go on to become a manager who's fighting for titles in England. Mm-hmm. And I just think it's a shame the way he left Celtic. And I think the problem is, as soon as you leave a club in that sort of manner, whatever you did beforehand is tarnished. And Liverpool have had that for football players, and it's just a bit sad because you just kind of think, well, nobody really wants to remember what he did before he left. But I think, obviously Neil Lennon's back and they're going to breeze to the when the title, resumes, when football resumes, which it will do. Celtic will breeze to another title and they'll win it a massive landslide again. I think it should probably hope in a couple of years people look back and go, yeah, Rodgers, what he did at Celtic was incredible.
I think so. And, that time will probably come when we wrap up the 9 in a row. However that is going to happen, obviously the decision is yet to be made in relation to the return of football to these shores. There's more important things to concern yourself with in the meantime, and I think that's where Jurgen Klopp comes across really as a football fan's man, if you like. When you listen to Klopp in interviews, look, he's extremely likeable because he seems to get it, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think it's also incredibly important to, like you said, I think there's a really bad taste in the mouth when, I know Karen Brady, and she writes in a column in The Sun, which kind of says, but she kind of, within a week, she was saying, football should be abandoned, and you're talking about West Ham are in a relegation fight. And you think it's not the right time to talk about football. It's not the right time to even talk about when it's going to come back, because it'll come back when it comes back, and nothing else is really that important, because we haven't got into the worst state of what's happening with the virus. And I think Klopp coming out saying that, football, I know it's a quote from, I think one of the popes, that of all the most unimportant things, football is the most important, but it is unimportant on the scale of things. And this is coming from me, my livelihood is based around football mainly. And I know it's your life as well, with the work you do. But yeah, there's no point in talking about who's going to win titles or what should happen. It'll all happen naturally. But when the season does complete, and Liverpool will win their first title in, I think, 30 years, and it kind of shows, Klopp's, one of the best managers in the world, and I don't think Liverpool have had that for a while, because even when we had Benitez, we didn't have the right owners, so we couldn't buy the right players. But everything seems to have fitted for Liverpool, and the European Cup was amazing. And I know a lot of it comes back down to kind of Celtic connection, is like players like Virgil van Dijk, who has just gone on. I mean, even when we used to watch him together at Celtic, I know you always used to bang on about him. And he is the best defender in the world now, which is bizarre to think that we've both probably watched him for most of his career turn into an incredibly good, probably the best player in Scotland, go to Southampton, and then eventually now he's the best defender in the world.
When we watched them, the pair of us would often talk about how far advanced he was as a player within that environment and within that league. When you watch him now for Liverpool, what's he added to his game?
I think he has that. He's rarely out of position. There was a stat that I think he went a year that no one had dribbled past him for 12 months in Europe or in the Premier League. And once you played against Massey twice, Suarez twice, is pretty bizarre. He's always in the right position. He's incredibly calm. And I also think the ability he has, which all world-class defenders have, like John Terry had it, is that you make the person who's playing next to you better. I mean, Matip, people had written off as a centre-back, and then he played in the, arguably one of the man of the match in the European Cup final, and then the same with Gomez now. He does make the whole back four better, and the whole team a lot calmer. So, I mean, for me, I thought he should have won the Ballon d'Or. I think he is the best defender in the world, probably the best defender there's been, for quite some years, because there's been a while where centre-backs really been quite poor. And 75 million is obviously a huge amount to pay for a defender, but if you look at Harry Maguire went for 80 to Man United, you'd have to say that Liverpool got a really good deal.
Yeah, I mean, what's your thoughts now on Celtic, watching from afar? Obviously, since you and I used to go a few seasons back, we've had Brendan Rodgers, the Revolution, Dembele, now Eduard. What's your thoughts looking up at Celtic and how we're doing now?
I think I do find it interesting because I thought it would have been, well, at Christmas time, I thought it was going to be a lot closer race between Celtic and Rangers. But I think Celtic just have, I think because they've got Neil Lennon who's done it so much, and then I think you've got players like Scott Brown, it's kind of like it's that marathon mentality. And now they've broken ahead, and then Rangers just keep drawing or losing games. But I still think the players that impressed me the most are the players who were there playing when we went and watched, And I think that bulk of Scottish players. I mean, I know Forrest, like a season ago, was unbelievable, and I think Brown still looks brilliant. It's great to see Forster back in goal. I just think their squad is just so much better than anyone else's, I just think it's a shame they couldn't have got to the next stage in Europe, because I think they could have had a chance with the right amount of, if they got the right fixture, I think they could have gone quite far in Europe. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see who they buy in the summer, because I think Rangers will spend a lot of money again, and they haven't got it right so far, but that could happen. So hopefully Celtic can sign a couple of good players.
How surprised were you, Luke, being a Liverpool fan, when Stevie Gerrard, who we both know was a Celtic fan, or certainly had Celtic leanings, how surprised were you when he eventually took that job at Ibrox?
I wasn't surprised in the sense of him. I know that a lot of Liverpool players have Celtic connections. I wasn't surprised at that. I was more surprised that it just seemed like a poison chalice. Like Frank Lampard going to Derby seemed like quite a shrewd move, because I thought, well, if you can get into the playoffs, which he did, then you've had a good season. As your first season as a manager, and he got the Chelsea job off the back of it, and he got he had a couple of really good loan players on from Chelsea as well, so that helped. And I think going to Rangers, I just thought the best you can do is win the league, and that's pretty unrealistic. Try and win a cup, but at the end of the day, I love Steve Gerrard as a player. He's the best captain, easily in my lifetime. But if he leaves Rangers without winning a trophy, that's not great on his CV. And even a year ago, people were talking about Klopp maybe leaving because he normally stays for 7 years, and the next manager, who would it be? And everyone is saying Steven Gerrard. In Liverpool now, in the press, no one's saying Gerrard anymore.
Yeah.
I think Gerrard would have to go to another club and succeed before he got the Liverpool job. And I think that's because at the moment he hasn't won a trophy at Rangers when he should have. And I think him coming out in the press, which he did pretty recently, saying he was going to have to think about his position, seems a bit bizarre, because he's spent a lot of money on some players. And if you haven't it's not like it's not his team. If he hasn't kind of managed to put his imprint on his team at this stage, blaming the drivers of the players, then it doesn't look good. So, yeah, I was more surprised that Gerrard took a job which seemed to be a pretty poor job to take.
Definitely. I mean, the Liverpool thing, if you like, you and I discussed it in great depth about the connections between the two clubs, Celtic and Liverpool. I think with the modern day, and in particular the money around about the Premiership, and a fan base that may not look back so romantically at the connections between Liverpool and Celtic, but historically, the two cities have some incredible similarities with regards to the Irish diaspora. Luke, do you think that connection is still there between Celtic and Liverpool?
I don't think it's there as much as it was. I think, obviously, with Troxteen and Shankly, they were friends, so I think that kind of heightened it even more. And then you had obviously players like, Dalglish. And I think there was that. Sometimes when a player moves to a club, it's very rare that your best player moves to another club. But it's a different country it moves to, and, it went to Liverpool, so I think probably a lot of Celtic fans at the time understood it. But I think now, I think these great games in Europe that Liverpool and Celtic will play, and Celtic, the last big one, Celtic won. But I don't think now, I think the leagues are so different, and I think fans seem to be less into history, than fans like we are, like I'm obsessed about Liverpool's history and Celtic's history probably more than Liverpool's, but I don't think fans look back and, think about all of those connections. I think they just look about what's kind of ahead. I don't even think derbies is as big as they used to be. Like even Liverpool Man United, I don't think that game was as ruthless as it used to be when there was people like Gerrard and Rio Ferdinand playing, Paul Scholes and in the class of 92. I just feel like football's kind of moved on now. I remember someone saying to me that I was talking to a friend who's got two kids who play football. They're saying that his kids support a player rather than a team.
Right.
So when now they move to Juventus, then they support Juventus. And I was like, that's just bizarre. But I think football's just changed so much. It's kind of the FIFA generation, so I think it's changed quite a bit.
It certainly has changed a fair old bit, and I think what's good at the moment is we've got Van Dijk and Robertson at Liverpool, and they obviously fly the flag for Celtic quite vocally. I mean, I was hearing the circumstances by which Robertson was actually released from Celtic yesterday. It was remarkable that we released that player, and we almost released Kieran Tierney as well. And obviously that would have been a huge error in the judgment of the youth development staff at that time, Luke. Now you've been very prolific looking at your movies and your documentaries. You were going for almost one a year, right up until the John Barnes project. So what's in the pipeline for you now once everything gets back to some form of normality? What kind of projects are you involved in now?
I filmed a documentary in Australia last year in the summer. Our summer, their winter. I filmed a documentary called These Sporting Lives, which is about 3 physically disabled rugby league players who travelled from Yorkshire over to the Gold Coast to train and play with the Gold Coast Titans. That's going to go out on Amazon this summer. That was great. It was great to shoot a different sport. I didn't really know much about rugby league until I moved to Yorkshire. It's the main sport here. And I do a lot of work with a rugby league team called the Bradford Bulls, which historically is a really big team. And I've just done a boxing documentary called The Box of the First Round, which is about a boxer who's turned pro at 36, and then he's got his first title fight at 39. And so he's fighting people who are nearly half his age. And it's about his diet and about his attitudes and the way he has to train differently. So those are my next 2 projects, which are filmed and are coming out as soon as things get back to probably even if things don't get back to normal. I think they'll both come out one will come out in end of April and then one will come out in June. And then when everything's back to normal, we can film again. I'll get busy filming a mini-series, a football-based mini-series that I'm doing. But yeah, that's me. Apart from that, nothing else.
Always busy, Luke. Always moving on to the next project, which is fantastic. For any listeners out there who are not familiar with Luke's work, follow him on Twitter at Luke Massey, and all his links will be on his Twitter page. Luke, you're putting out some content that Celtic fans will appreciate. Every Friday night at 6 o'clock, we'll be putting the links on a Celtic State of Mind's Twitter and Facebook streams, and you'll be able to watch Celtic Smiler, a film. It was a fantastic experience for me. It brought us together, and thankfully 5 years later we're still chatting about football, chatting about Celtic. So Luke, stay safe, and I'll see you on the other side.
Cheers, Paul. You too. Stay safe and much to the family.